liquidity, safety, and rate of return in that order. In this episode, I'm going to address the question, what are the features of a prudent investment? I've learned this lesson the hard way, so get ready. You're going to understand why so many people who do not understand this get caught and they lose money during periods of time when they didn't see things coming. So I'm Doug Andrew, and I've helped many thousands of people throughout my 4.5-decade career optimize their financial assets and minimize taxes to prepare for a comfortable retirement so that they will not outlive their money. And I often teach them the 3 key elements of a prudent investment, and they go, whoa, I've never thought of it this way before. So I'm going to share with you why these are so critical, and when you get into situations where your money is tied up in investments that do not pass the liquidity, safety, and rate of return test, why people get into trouble and they get caught off guard. And I've learned this lesson the hard way, okay? So I'm going to use this risk-return paradigm chart that I've used for years. I've authored now 12 books. And if you stay with me to the end of this episode, I'm going to gift you a copy of my most recent 300-page best-selling book, The Laser Fund. So stay with me here. In this risk-return paradigm, I list 16 general categories of investments from highest risk to lowest risk. And you can read in my book what these are. They're listed right here. Now, when we apply the tests of liquidity, safety, and rate of return, and then finally the tax benefits, you're going to see how many of these typical places where people put their money fail, and why I have a scoring system in my book that I'm going to gift you, where you can score any investment on a scale of 1 to 10 based on liquidity, safety, rate of return, and tax benefits. But let me explain it this way here first. If I apply the liquidity test, now what is liquidity? The ability to access your money when you need it with an electronic funds transfer or phone call, okay? You need money instantly. When we apply the liquidity test, this many fail the liquidity test. You can't get your money without incurring penalties, or it's not a drive-up window at a bank or something like that. And so that many fail. Now let's apply the safety test. I'm talking about safety of institutions and safety of principal. When we apply the safety test, in addition, this many more fail the safety test. You do not have safety of principal. You can lose the money that you invest. It can go down less than what you invested. That's called safety of principal. Or that any year you make money, it doesn't become newly protected principal. And people go, can you do that? Yep. So this many more fail the safety test. Now, what about the rate of return test? Simply put, you've got to earn a rate of return that's greater than the inflation rate at the time. You can't be rowing upstream at the rate of 1 mile an hour, 1% interest in a bank or credit union, when the current of inflation is coming down at 3, or you're going backwards. This many do not pass the rate of return test. Whoa! We only have maybe 3 possibilities right here. Number 10 would be maybe a small handful of mutual funds. Number 15, maybe a small handful of annuities. And my favorite, number 12, and that is a maximum funded insurance contract. Now, when we apply the tax benefit test, there's only one left, and this is the tax favored access to your money, what I call the tax favored harvest. And there's only one left, and that's the maximum funded insurance contract. That's why I highlight it in green. And I'm going to explain why it is the only vehicle that allows you to have liquidity, safety, predictable rates of return, but they're tax-free. Whereas most people who use annuities, those are only tax-deferred, like IRAs and 401ks. When you start taking out the money, it's now taxable. Mutual funds, you have a lot of market volatility, and they're also taxed as earned or taxed deferred when you put them in IRAs or 401ks, but then you pay the tax when you take it out. There's only one that allows you to accumulate your money tax-free, and then be able to access the money for the rest of your life tax-free. And you don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half or retire to do that, by the way. And when you ultimately die, it transfers income tax-free. And it's number 12. That's why it's my favorite vehicle. So next, I'm going to share with you each of these key elements of a prudent investment and why they are so significant. So I mentioned that I would like to gift you a free copy of my most recent best-selling book. It's 300 pages called The Laser Fund. On the front cover, I have these pillars, LSRT, liquidity, safety, return, rate of return, and tax benefits. And in the book, I have this scoring system where you can take any investment, any place where people put money, and you can score it on a scale of 1 to 10 based upon liquidity, 10 being, a perfect score. And then safety, rate of return, and tax benefits. Most investments where people put money only score between all four. That would be a total of 40, maybe only 18 or 20 or 22. The reason why the Laser Fund is my favorite vehicle is because it scores 33 to 35 or higher. Nothing else comes close. And so that's why it's my favorite vehicle. So let me show you each of these key elements here and help you understand why this is so powerful. Now, if this is already arousing curiosity and you know somebody who ought to watch this video, be sure and share, comment, click like. But I would love for you to subscribe. And when you do that, click that little bell, because then you'll be notified every time I post a YouTube video, which I do almost daily, where I answer a specific financial question with an in-depth answer almost daily. And so I don't want you to miss out. Now, when we talk about these three key elements, I call them the three greatest strengths of three-dimensional wealth. That's the name of this YouTube channel. So for years, I've helped people balance their life, and we're talking about the financial dimension with the foundational dimension, their health and their faith and their beliefs, and also the intellectual dimension, so that it's like a three-legged stool. But when I talk to them about their money, because most people sort of came to me through the financial portal, or dimension, as I call it, I had to sometimes rearrange or reposition their assets to increase the liquidity, safety, and rate of return, in addition to the tax benefits. So these are the key elements: liquidity, safety of principal, and rate of return. Too many people get these in reverse order. They think the rate of return is the most important thing to do. And then when they get into trouble, they get disabled, they get sick, or they get laid off, they can't access their money without huge penalties or triggering tax. So that's not very liquid. Some people confuse liquidity with convenience, thinking, my money in the bank has a drive-up window, so it's liquid. Well, yeah, but if push came to shove, do you know what a bank or a credit union could say? Sorry, you can't access your money in the bank for 6 months if things were really bad in the economy. Did you know that? So it's maybe not as liquid as you think. Where do banks put your money for liquidity? Into multi-trillion-dollar insurance companies. So I just bypass the middleman and put my serious cash there, because that's where banks take your money to increase their liquidity and rate of return and safety by about 6 notches. So why would you leave any more money in a bank than what you might need for emergencies or for a goal that's 6 months down the road? Anything that is earmarked, when I sock away money for goals 6 months or longer down the road, I don't put in a bank or credit union. I put it into what I call the Laser Fund to increase the liquidity, the safety, and the rate of return dramatically. So let's look at these key elements. Liquidity, again, is the ability to access your money when you need it within 24, 48 hours. Now, most emergencies can wait at least a day or two, but I'm talking about with an electronic funds transfer phone call, not some drive-up window at the bank. That's convenient, but it's not really the definition of liquidity. The second strength of the three-dimensional strategies that you're going to learn about in my book is safety. Safety of the institution, and that would be the multi-trillion-dollar insurance industry, which is the backbone of not only America, but the backbone of the world. This is where governments go to for help. One insurance company where I put some of my money manages over $3.5 trillion. That's as much money as the IRS collects in taxes in an entire year. And that's one insurance company. And so these institutions are rated oftentimes triple A or double A. You know, most banks are only rated triple B. The difference between triple B and triple A is like 6 steps higher. So if you're understanding what I'm saying, if you put your money in a bank or a credit union thinking it's safe because it has FDIC insurance, that's okay, but hello, where's your bank putting your money? They're turning around and putting 30 to 40% of their tier 1 assets. What are tier 1 assets? That's money that they have to have on hand, liquid and safe in case of a run on the bank. They put it into the multi-trillion-dollar insurance companies. Why? Because they're increasing the liquidity and the safety by 6 notches higher and the rate of return. See, banks recently have been paying what, 1%? So collectively, we pass a hat around the room and we deposit $1 million into the bank and they pay us 1%. That's $10,000 in interest a year. They turn around and take that million and put a big chunk of it into insurance companies and earn 5%. They don't even link to an index like I do. How much more is 5% than 1%? Don't say 4. It's 500% more. It's 5 times. On $1 million, they make $50,000 tax-free by putting it in the insurance company. They only have to pay you $10,000. They make $50,000. Would you hire an employee for $10,000 that made you an extra $50,000? Oh yeah. Would you buy a widget machine for $10,000 that made you an extra $50,000? Yeah. That's a 500% return on employment cost or equipment cost if you're a business owner. They get it. So you actually increase your safety when you put it into the insurance industry directly. And this is where the federal government in 2008, when 400 banks went under and 900 more were on the brink, on the watch list, they asked the 5 major banks in America where they had their tier 1 assets for liquidity and safety. In BOLI, B-O-L-I, bank-owned life insurance. On who? They own life insurance on people. See, it's the owner of the insurance policy that gets all the tax-free growth and income. That's what they do for liquidity and safety. But rate of return, they're paying you 1 and they turn around and make 5 times that. So they're increasing the rate of return. That's the third key element. Earn a competitive rate of return tax-free that historically has beaten inflation. You know, with my laser funds for the last 45 years, I've always earned a rate of return that's at least 5.5% greater than the inflation rate at the time. Even when inflation was at 10, I was earning 15.5%, okay? You can do this too. So get ready. I'm going to show you the power of these 3 key elements and how they can work for your brighter future so you don't outlive your money. So if you haven't figured out yet, I call it the laser fund because it spells LSRR, or I just make it into the word liquid asset safely earning returns. Liquidity, safety, rate of return. The tax benefits are icing on the cake. So what does this mean? When you have serious cash that you do not want to jeopardize, that you're earmarking for future retirement or college funding for your kids or grandkids or working capital for business emergency funds, you can bypass the middleman, increase the liquidity, safety, and rate of return, and have tax-free accumulation and access. When you do this, you are able to eliminate 3 big dangers: taxes, inflation, and market volatility. It means this: from 2000 to 2012, in that 12-year period, people who have their money in traditional IRAs and 401ks in the market lost 40% twice in that decade. 2001 to 2003, after 9/11 terrorist attacks, their money dropped 40%. If you had $1 million at the turn of the century, it went down to 600,000. It took 4 years until 2007 to make it back. They had to put off retirement 7 years. They felt like they had lost their future. And then in one single year, 2008, as Warren Buffett put it, when the tide went out, it revealed who was swimming naked, he said. They weren't protected, and they lost 40% again for the second time in a decade. It took 4 years until 2012 to get back to break even. In that 12-year period, using the laser fund that passes the liquidity, safety, and rate of return test with flying colors, people that had $1 million ended up with $2.5 million, even $3 million at the end of the period when most people were barely getting their money back that they had 12 years earlier. Do you want to learn how you can do this? So remember, liquidity is number one. Safety of principal, number two. Rate of return is number three. And tax benefits are icing on the cake. If you want to learn more about this, I would love to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book, The Laser Fund, because it passes this with flying colors. So I'll tell you what, I will pay for the book. You can claim your free copy by going to laserfund.com or just click on the link below, and you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that, and I will fire you out a copy of this book so you can learn why this passes the liquidity, safety, and rate of return test with flying colors, and you will begin to take ownership of your brighter future by making sure you harness the key elements of prudent investing.